Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us is Jodi Williams. She is an accredited financial counselor, and tonight she's speaking on the topic of overcoming financial stress to improve well-being. She will also be speaking with us virtually on Tuesday, March 28th. And we are very pleased to have her with us tonight as well. Thank you so much, Jodi.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. Very happy to be here and excited to share some information with everybody. So, as Elizabeth said, I'm going to be talking about overcoming financial stress to improve your overall well-being. I'm an accredited financial counselor and coach, which what that means is I help people with daily money management. So I can help people with budgeting, improving their credit, getting credit if they don't already have it, paying off debt, their money mindset, pretty much anything around finances. I can help people with the exception of like selling investments and insurance because I'm not licensed to do that, but I can always help people find somebody who's certified to do that. So, all right, we will get started. Here we go. So I want to just share my story before we get started because it's an important piece of why I do what I do. So looking back many years, I don't want to age myself and say exactly when, but when I was 25 years old, I found myself with over $40,000 in debt. That was mostly credit cards and some home equity loans to help make a bunch of improvements on a home and a car. And the amount of stress that caused was immense. And I know that a lot of people find themselves in this very situation. And basically, because of that stress, I was constantly worried. And, I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills every month. I mean, I had a job. But the fact is that the majority of my paycheck was going to pay these bills. And there wasn't always a lot of money to do anything extra, anything fun. I worried that if something ever catastrophic happened, how would I be able to handle that? Because I would probably just have to put more money on credit cards. And that would have been hard at the time because my credit cards were maxed out. So it's a big deal. And I know a lot of people have experienced this as well. The stress was so great that it was affecting my health in a lot of ways. I couldn't sleep well. It was affecting my work performance. I was having trouble with my relationships at home, my husband at the time. It was just stressful, right? Because it was like, it was overwhelming. And when you have something like that that's so big and looming, it pretty much takes over your thoughts 24/7, right? And so, it was something that I just couldn't deal with anymore. So one day I finally said, I'm not going to live like this anymore, and I don't want to continue going down this road. So I started learning about personal finance, and I started taking some classes. I started reading books and doing whatever it was that I could to, how do I bring myself out of this situation because I don't want to feel this way anymore. So after learning a lot of things, I ended up digging myself out of all that debt. It did take me a couple of years and a lot of hard work. It was putting every penny that I had towards that debt. I spent a lot of time not doing a lot of fun things because I was trying to put that money towards that. I worked second jobs for several years to be able to do that. But the great thing is I did do that. And so this is really kind of my beginning point of why I decided to become a financial counselor. I didn't start that job for many years after this happened in my life, but I just don't want anybody to ever have to go through that kind of stress. And so knowing what it felt like, I want to help other people. So what I do, like I said, I explained kind of what I do as a financial coach, and I try to take a real holistic view around finances. So I don't just teach you know, the numbers and, basic finance type stuff. I look at the stress, I look at finances and the whole person and how are the finances affecting people, right? So looking at the things that might happen to them, their relationships, their work, their all of that sort of thing. So, all right, moving forward. All right, so what we're going to talk about, the link between finances and health, and the top 5 practical ways that you can reduce financial stress right now. This is not an all-encompassing list of, ways to help financial stress. There's many more, but this is just a quick list that you could use right now. And then you could always reach out for other information if you want it. And then we'll have question and answer at the end. As I was talking with Elizabeth a few minutes ago, if you have questions that you want to put in the chat during, I will answer those as they come through as well. All right, so what stresses us out? This is a poll that was taken last year and for Americans about what is stressful. And as you can see, money is at 32%. That's a huge amount. And this is not just from last year. Like I looked up a lot of data, and most years when they've done these sort of questionnaires, money comes out on top as being the biggest stressor for Americans. And you can see even work is like, what is that, 21% behind what money is. So this is something that's on a lot of people's minds. All right, the link between finances and health. So if you've ever been stressed, like seriously about something, you know that it can cause problems in more ways than just, that initial thing that's causing the stress. So when you're dealing with finances and having to worry about it all the time, it can really affect your mental health. Some people start getting anxiety, depression, sleep issues, because as I described in my own story, it's something that's on your mind 24/7. And so it really affects the way you start looking at the world. Stress can also aggravate physical illnesses that you've already got. For example, migraines, high blood pressure, things like ulcerative colitis and ulcers, just to name a few. But really, if you have any sort of physical illness or things that are already going on in your body, adding stress on top of that just puts more pressure and can cause more problems for those diseases or diagnoses that you have. So how this happens is somatic responses. And if you're not familiar, somatic responses are basically physical things that can happen in our body due to stress. And it centers from what's happening in our minds. So as we think about things or are worried about things, physical problems can start manifesting. So with physical stress or financial stress, it can cause many things. Like people start seeing somatic responses like backaches and migraines and so many other things that it's like your body's way of talking to you to say something's not right here. And I see it with so many people that I've worked with and with my story as well. I was having a lot of physical symptoms because of that stress that was going on in my head. And the thing with finances and health is that it's sort of linked in both ways. And what I mean by that is financial stress can cause poor health, but then poor health can also cause financial stress. And the reason for this is, right, if your health starts getting worse, you may have to start going to the doctor. And depending on whether you have insurance or not, or how good your insurance is, you may start to get medical bills. And in fact, medical problems led to half of all bankruptcies in 2005. And I know that's been a while since that study that I pulled that from, but it's still the leading cause of all bankruptcies today is usually from some sort of medical issue that's happened and people just can't afford to pay it. So poor health can also cost you a lot from lost wages, time away from work. So these two things are just so inextricably linked, and it can become a vicious cycle, because if you're sick already, then you get stressed about finances, which makes you more sick, and so on and so forth. So if our finances are not in order, there's greater chances of us having health issues. So with that being said, we should all be looking at our finances as part of our overall wellness and taking care of that, and not thinking that it's separate from our wellness and our health, because it really is tied. All right. So as I was talking about somatic symptoms from stress. So here's a few things. As you can see, physical symptoms like increase in heart rate, increase in sweating, rapid breathing, tense muscles. That's why a lot of people who are dealing with stress, a lot of times they start getting migraines and like backaches and problems there, because of the tension and tightening up from that stress that's going on. The cognitive symptoms, of course, can be confusion, inability to concentrate. And that's where people start having trouble at work and performing in those capacities. They can start feeling ill, out of control, and then behavioral symptoms as well. Nervous mannerisms, scowling, talking rapidly. So it's a very real thing. If you've ever heard of that, the somatic responses to stress. Okay, so now that we've looked at how stress can affect our health, let's look at 5 things that you can do to try and help yourself. So number 1, and I think this is the most important for anybody, is to talk about it. So if you're feeling stress of any sort, no matter what the reason is, whether it's you aren't making enough, maybe you're deep in debt, you're fighting with your spouse over finances, any of those sort of things, seek out some sort of support, whether that's your spouse, a partner, a trusted friend, a financial counselor or coach. But just being able to talk about what's going on inside can make a huge difference in how you feel about your finances and that stressful feeling. Something about this too, of course, talking about it is kind of contrary to what we're all taught, right? So many people are taught as they're growing up that, oh, you don't talk about finances. That's like private stuff, and you don't want to share that. But one of my big things is I wish that wasn't the case. Like I tell everybody, let's start talking about finances more so that people don't have to live in shame and keep those things in, because it's not healthy for anybody. And of course, there can be a lot of shame around financial issues, because if we're in that situation, we probably feel guilty that, we've overspent, we've, put all this stuff on our credit card, or we're fighting with our spouse, or all the things, right? We don't want people to know those things about us. But really, if you can get past that and share with somebody, that's so important. And, if you reach out to somebody like a financial counselor or coach too, it's absolutely confidential. That information doesn't have to go anywhere. So that can be a great source for people if they're like, ugh, I don't even want my spouse to know what I'm feeling, or my friends. So another thing to think about in that sense is, if you are holding all that stuff inside and you're ruminating and stressing about your situation, that's not helping you. It's not serving you to keep that in. And so just getting that out, just talking, even if you don't come up with a way to fix it, but releasing it from your body will help you feel better. This next tip about talking about finances, this is specifically for people who are sharing finances with somebody else. So if you have a partner that you live with, or a spouse, something I really encourage people to do is to set a money date on a regular basis. So this can be as often as you need. Some people need it weekly, some monthly. It just depends on what fits your particular situation. And what's good is to you create a no judgment zone when you get together on this money date. You don't have to go out to have the date. You can do it in your own home, but you set up some rules around it. So there's no judgment. Both people get to talk about what's stressing them out with finances in whatever way, without being judged from the other person. Also, having an agenda can be helpful here so that both people coming to the date know what's going to be talked about. So if you need to feel like you need to prepare yourself mentally or for your side of the conversation, that can be helpful. And then once you've talked everything out, this is a great opportunity to be able to create a plan for whatever ails you at this point about the finances. Creating a way to avoid hot topics or talking about your spending. You could create a plan to kind of curb the spending or change your habits around finances or paying off debt or whatever the case may be. But this is something that's so invaluable for couples, because I know also too that money is the number one reason that people get divorced too. So such a great thing for couples to be able to use. All right, number 2 is creating a budget. So this sounds pretty simple, but so many people do not use this. And, a budget is a tool. And so, basically it's figuring out what your income is and what your expenses are for a given period of time. And that's most useful if it's like per pay period. So, if you get paid twice a month, you can look at what's coming in and what's due, let's say the first 2 weeks of the month before your next paycheck, and you do the same thing. What I tell people for creating a budget is to look back at your past 2 months of spending, whether that's using credit card statements, bank statements, and just really seeing where your money's going. Because so often people get in such a routine of swiping cards that they don't really know exactly where their money's going. And so looking back over 2 months should give you a pretty good idea of where the money's going and then how much. So a lot of people don't track things like, how much do I really spend on gas in a month or groceries in a month? And so looking back, you can really, add those up and average it out and see what a realistic amount is. So once you do that, again, ask the question, once you've assigned all your expenses and what you're going to spend on certain things, is it realistic? I've helped many people, and they've come to a meeting and we're talking about their budget, and they're like, yeah, I only spend like $200 a month on groceries. And I'm like, seriously? Like, I'm not sure if that's realistic or not, especially with the way, groceries and everything is costing right now. So take a good hard look, make sure that you are looking through and seeing what you're spending on a regular basis. And then once you've built the budget, find something that works for you to be able to track it and stick to it. There's many different options here. There's mobile apps. You can make an Excel spreadsheet. Personally, that's my favorite way of doing things, but not everybody likes doing that. Or just having pen and paper. You can just write it down and maybe, keep it in a prominent place at home, put it up on the fridge, or, stick it in your wallet so you have it with you at all times. So finding what really works for you is important. If you try one thing and it doesn't work for you, not a big deal. Just switch to another thing, but you've got to find what works for you, because if it's not working, you're not going to use it, and stick to it. So, and then the last thing on that is to create an appointment with yourself or with your partner to track the spending and make sure that you're updating that budget on a regular basis, because it's not a static thing. It does need to be changing as time goes on. Income can change, expenses can change. So just really making sure that you're following it. All right, number 3, something I see a lot of people struggling with, and it causes a lot of stress for them, is not remembering to pay their bills on time. There's so many easy ways to be able to automate payments that, I think everybody should automate everything if they can. Turn on automatic bill paying, because then you don't have to worry that your bills are going to be paid late. So with this, though, of course, you have to be tracking and making sure that there's enough money in the account so that when, the credit card goes to pull out your minimum payment or however much you're going to be paying, that there's enough money in the account. And so one thing that can really be helpful with that is creating and designating different accounts. I know a lot of different people who have multiple accounts, and this can be really helpful. So let's say maybe you have one account that's specifically for paying bills, one for spending, and one for saving. And so when the money comes in on payday, you can divvy it up between these accounts. You know you have enough in your bills account so that when those automatic payments happen, you're not going to get overdrawn. Everything's there. And then, like on the spending account, you can just basically spend until it's empty. If that's how you set the budget up. Because I've had people automate and then they're not tracking everything correctly. And then, oh, I forgot that the water bill hasn't gone through yet. And then, you think you have more money than you really do. And so this is just a way to really simplify, knowing that you have money in the right places to take care of all the things that you need to take care of. All right, number 4, creating an emergency fund. This is another one I can't stress how important this is. An emergency fund, of course, is only used for emergencies. And the reason is so that you can avoid having to charge a large sum or get a loan or borrow money from somebody if something catastrophic happens. Examples of that, your car breaks down, the roof starts leaking, you need to travel maybe for family sickness or death, some sort of medical situation, or you lose your job. Having this cushion of cash can really save people a lot of stress because you're not hit with this, oh my God, what am I going to do now? At least you've got that money because you probably are dealing with some sort of tragedy that's going to cause other stress. You don't need that financial stress on top of it as well. Make sure, though, I would say that if you build an emergency fund, you're only using it for what it's meant to be used for. I had a friend once that asked me, Jodi, do you think it would be okay if I dipped into my emergency fund? And I said, well, what's the emergency? What's happening? She's like, well, I don't have any money right now, but there's this great sale going on at, Nordstrom's, and I need to go get this thing, whatever it was, a pair of shoes or something. And I was like, no, that's definitely not a reason to dip into your emergency fund. So just keep that in mind. You can set up separate savings accounts for those sorts of things. A good emergency fund should have 3 to 6 months worth of basic needs expenses. So that doesn't mean everything that you pay for in a month, but the basics. So housing, utilities, food, car payment, car insurance, those sorts of things. You don't have to, if you're investing or saving, you wouldn't necessarily include those amounts in the 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And then people ask me often, well, how do I do that? How do I build an emergency fund if there's nothing left over each month? If I'm already, living paycheck to paycheck, how can I make this happen? And some good ideas are looking at what you're spending and cutting out unnecessary things. This could mean the $5 a day coffee habit at Starbucks that you have. It could mean reducing other bills. Maybe you cut down on your cable package or your cell phone bill if you can, or, there's different ways if you look at all the things that you pay for and seeing if you can reduce those expenses. Something great that people have the opportunity coming up is tax refunds. So instead of when you get your tax refund in, March, April, or whenever, instead of going out and blowing it or, planning a big purchase with that, maybe use some of that, set it aside or all of it to get that emergency fund started. And then what I say, just chip away at it. It's not like you have to set aside that 3 to 6 months, like in one deposit. You can work towards it. So maybe a work bonus, put some of that money aside. Getting a side gig. There's so many opportunities now for, being an Uber driver or delivering food, Instacart, like a lot of different things, or just a regular part-time job somewhere. But, you can make that a goal, work for 6 months or something at this side gig, and then you put all that money into the emergency fund and don't spend it on anything else. All right, number 5, live within your means. And this is a big one. So know what you can and can't afford. An example of that is not doing the right thing is driving a Mercedes when you're on a Kia budget. It might not be a good idea to have 50% of your pay coming in being spent on a car payment. I've seen that before, and I'm like, you know what you can afford. And I know a lot of times, and this was my situation when I was younger, was when I first, moved out, I got a house and I wanted to get it set up and I wanted to be living like everybody else was living, right? Like having all the things and the furniture. And, that's not always possible when we're young and don't have a lot of money coming in, at least not really nice things. Maybe you go to Goodwill and start buying things, or you get things at a discount, but not putting all those things on credit cards. So what I say too is, like, if you can't pay off a large purchase within 2 to 3 months, you should probably wait and save, put the money aside and wait until you have enough to actually pay for it in cash. And then asking yourself that whenever there is a big purchase, hey, could I delay this instead of taking on more credit card debt? Great thing to be looking at. This is probably one of the biggest areas of financial stress that people have. So if that's you, if you have a lot of credit card debt, make a plan to stop using the cards first. Of course, that's most important. Excuse me. So you're not adding to the debt, and then, figure out how you can get those paid off. This is really interesting. Whoops. Sorry about that. So there's great statistics that I found here looking at that. So the average American household, any kind of debt, is $158,000. And credit cards alone, the average is over $14,000 in credit card debt at any one time. That seems like a pretty big number. And looking back at my own situation is pretty shameful that I had as much as I had, because it's way more than this average, right? So basically it's the norm though. So many people have credit card debt. And the one thing that I really want to point out that's important is, because people will tell me, well, I have the money, so what's the big deal if I put stuff on my credit cards? Well, the big deal is there's opportunity cost to that. So people are paying, based on that average, about $300 a month in credit card payments. But if that $300 was invested instead of paying it towards credit card, and if you earned even a modest 8% over 20 years, that would actually equal over $152,000. So that's a huge amount of money that people could have set aside for their retirement, instead of, paying the local department store interest on a credit card, or, whatever it is that you're buying, whoever that's being paid for. Anyway, using credit cards is costing people a lot in potential retirement. And I don't have any statistics in here on what that is, but the last time I looked, I think it said something like the average 40 to 50-year-old only has a few $1,000s put away for retirement. And that's a scary number, considering that the amount of money that most people get in Social Security and other benefits is not a lot of money. So I think the future can look kind of grim for people, if they're not planning for retirement and being able to put a lot of money away. Okay, I just wanted to share a few examples of some clients. Their names have been changed to protect the innocent, but I did get their permission to share this information. Oops, sorry. So a few people I've worked with, Anita, she's a 65-year-old, and part of her financial stress that she was dealing with is she was overdrawing her bank account every single month. Her bills were being paid late, her credit was low, and after being able to work together for several months, she was no longer overdrawing her account. Her bills were finally getting paid on time. And because of that, and because she started tracking what she was doing, she eventually even started being able to save money every month so she could start doing some traveling, which is something that she really wanted to do. And then based on that, her credit her credit score started to go up and continues to go up. As you can imagine, the more that you can pay your bills on time, your credit gets better. So, and then Jennifer, 35-year-old, she was 30,000 in credit card debt. And she likes to go shopping a lot. And that was basically why she had so much credit card debt. And one of the things that I like to do, like I said, I work with people holistically. So we explored some of the reasons, like why are you shopping so much? Because the first thing you want to do before paying it off is you want to stop putting the stuff on the credit cards. And we discovered she had some emotional issues going on. And so her way of dealing with that was shopping, because she could numb out the pain, right? Of she'd get that little like dopamine high when she would go and buy the new thing that was exciting. But the problem is that high would wear off really quickly from doing all the shopping. And then she started getting buyer's remorse. And then she was stuck with all this credit card debt and a lot of stuff that wasn't really bringing her joy and wasn't really that important in her life. So we worked on the habits, putting that in place to be able to stop the emotional shopping. And then we made a plan. So she's using the debt snowball to start whittling away at the debt now. So things are going great for her. The thing I want to point out for both of these examples is when I first started working with both of them, I asked them, what is your stress level when it comes to finances? And they both said they were a 10 out of 10. Their issues were consuming their lives. They were thinking about it all the time, having the physical symptoms. And now after working together, they've been able to cut it down to a 5. They're not down to 0s yet because they're both still like working through their stuff. But they say that their mental and physical health are doing way better now because of the reduction in the stress. And something that I see is oftentimes even a first appointment with somebody, just being able to talk to somebody and be like, oh, I'm going to unload all this now and tell somebody what's been going on. Like they feel better instantly. It's like they start sleeping. It's like, okay, I've shared it. I'm going to have a plan. I can start working with somebody. So just a few examples of how stress levels can really change and different situations and how they can be fixed. So last thoughts and a summary of what we've talked about. Of course, financial worries and stress can negatively affect our health. We've seen that. Anyone can master their finances and relieve the stress. I highly believe that. If you think that you can't, that it's too hard, just know that you can. Having a positive attitude and belief can do wonders for being able to turn your situation around. And again, getting help if you need it. Sometimes it is difficult to make changes on your own, but do some research, start reading up on things, take these tips to heart, talk to a friend, find a counselor or a coach that can help you get a plan and work through whatever you have going on. And then, learn the skills and change the habits around what you're doing with your money. And I guarantee if you do that, the stress is going to start going down. You're going to make huge changes in 2023 and, have a much better overall wellness and whole year by, taking control of your finances. So quick review of the 5 tips that I gave is talk about your finances and the stress that you're having around that. Create and use a budget, automate what you can, build an emergency fund, and then live within your means. So with that, again, these are not all encompassing. There's many other ways that you can help your finances, but this is a great start. And I guess we can open it up for questions now.
Feel free, folks, to unmute yourselves, or if you're shy, enter in the chat box. We'd love to hear your questions.
And again, so you see my information. If there's any questions, you can reach me. My email is jodi@financialframeworksllc.com, and my website is financialframeworksllc.com. So information there. I also offer a 30-minute free consultation if you have questions and just want to talk and see if maybe finding help through me would be a good fit. We could do that. And then we could talk about how I might be able to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jodi. And for those of you that are just tuning in, Jodi will be with us back again for on Tuesday, March 28th. So if you happen to miss any of her lovely presentations, she'll be speaking again on finances. So thank you so much, Jodi, for all you do in the community. And thank you everyone for watching.